Would you say like confidence is the absence of the fear of failure and judgment, like we've been kind of talking about?
I think that's a major part of it. You know, anxiety is like really rampant in our society. You know,
Hmm.
and I think like playing softball or baseball can be very anxiety ridden. Fear of striking out, fear of failure, fear of getting talked to in the car on the ride home from the tournament. You know, like there's a lot of that. And I think like when you're like confidence, a big part of it is not worrying about what others think or talking nicely to yourself inside of your own head.
Well, what I've noticed is a lot of players that I coach, they are afraid or almost nervous to try as hard as they can because it's almost like they don't want to embarrass themselves in front of their friends.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen that before?
Yeah, yeah, and I've also seen the opposite. You know, like
Yeah.
a player who just literally has no limits or no like boundary for like effort, where they just like. And we actually have one of those kids um, in our Monday
In the
night
class?
baseball program. He
Yeah.
does that where he just like he just goes, and sometimes it's almost like you know, like I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't think about any of that stuff, or he doesn't hold back.
I got a couple kids like that.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, and I've got a couple kids like that on the Lawrence team too. So it's like, yeah, I mean, like, but I've seen that though, like a fear of like, oh, if I try really, really hard and I screw up, I'm going to look stupid. Well, you know that leads to drop fly balls. That leads to striking out. That leads to, you know, missing a ground ball or not being able to field the ball, come through it, and make a throw because it's so many steps. You know what I mean? Because you're thinking about failure or not looking good. Can't worry about that stuff.
Right. So it's almost like you have to accept it though. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's an acceptance there of like I'm gonna mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, trying other sports, because now that I'm retired from baseball, I've been able to try things like basketball or like
Mm-hmm.
combat sports like MMA and stuff like that. I've realized that once you, especially as a beginner, like going into it as just like kind of a novice, you don't know what's going on, accepting that you're just gonna fail, like you're gonna miss a bunch of shots
Mm-hmm.
or you're gonna get tapped out a bunch of times,
Yeah.
the first time you try something. um, that's helped me a ton because now
Yeah.
I can like objectively look at where do I need to get better and all that. But if I go into it like, oh, I have to do really well and I feel like I'm afraid to fail,
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding on to something, it's almost like you just have to let go, and that's where the acceptance comes in.
Yeah. I think that's I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but I used to wrestle. I wrestled a lot. Like when I was a kid, it was a big thing. My
Mm.
oldest brother Kirby was a great wrestler, and so like we would it was kind of in the family. You know what I mean? So, um, but I went. There was a really great coach at Appleton West. His name was Coach Reesberg, and he's also a teacher there. But he said, hey, why don't you come along? I don't know. I was like in third grade or something,
Yeah.
and come along. We're going to a tournament, and you can wrestle, and we'll see how you do. Well, I'd never even been on a mat before. I don't even think I had a singlet. I think I showed up with a t-shirt and some shorts, And the first kid I wrestled was a superstar. Like he was like the best kid at our age and weight. And I mean, he pinned me in like 9 seconds.
Hmm.
And I had fight in me, but I didn't know any moves and I didn't even know what I was doing and whatever. Um, but I think about that. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because there was nowhere to go but up. I got killed. And so like for me, it was like that next year, a year later, we went to the same tournament, the same guy was there, and I beat him. Because Mr. Reesberg showed me a bunch of things, and like I wasn't worried. He kept saying, "Don't worry about that. You didn't. I don't expect anything from you." He kept telling me like, "Just have fun, just learn." And that was my first experience as a coach. Like like someone who is a process driven coach, and he was very
Hmm.
patient with me. And but that's what made it really fun is it didn't matter. I was already a good basketball player, and I was already doing the other stuff. So it was like that was pressure because I actually knew what I was doing, and I didn't want to do badly. But in wrestling, I didn't care. I was like, yeah, let's go.
Right, because you're a beginner, so you feel like there's nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. And a coach was very understanding and accepting, and just really made me comfortable that hey, I can just get better and better.
I had a coach that always said you had to always have like a white belt mentality, even if you think you're pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you go into it every day in training like you're a white belt.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something to learn too.
Yeah.
Because the minute you start thinking, okay, I have nothing left to learn, obviously that's not a really good
Right.
recipe for improving, right? Because you don't think you need to improve in anything, you
Yeah.
know. So
I think that's a really good statement, but I also think like for all the coaches out there, I think you have to have that mentality too as a coach, because here's the thing: you can do everything. You can recruit the best team. You can you can practice everything that you think to prepare a team for a game or a tournament. You can do all that stuff. You can hit them a million ground balls, do batting practice for hours, and still fail. And so like I think for a lot of coaches, like it's not about like immediate success. It's more about like teaching the players that it's a process. It's okay if we don't start off the greatest, as long as there's improvement in process where you're getting better and better. And any coach that says, "Oh, I know everything and this is how we're going to do it. I'm not going to change or adapt." Well, those days are gone. It's more about changing and adapting and improving and being process driven. So I totally agree with what your coach was saying there.
yeah. So recently I've been getting into just how this concept applies to like history too, because I know you're kind of a big history guy. So I did a little research on like samurai and how they apply this. And so like in the code of Bushido, it comes up several times. Like they say things like meditation on inevitable failure should be performed daily. And it also, another translation is inevitable death, right? So as like a warrior, right? Like failure is inevitable no matter what. Like we're all mortal. They also said, if you are prepared for death, then all things become possible. Okay. And so they would it's called Zazen meditation, where you're sitting on your knees. You sit there, deep breaths, and you just envision yourself losing a battle, essentially. And so they would do that every day. It's almost like it prepared them for it. Like they had nothing to lose because it already happened in their mind. I think that's kind of the same thing you're talking about there.
Yeah.
But it also proves, though, that this mindset we're talking about, where you accept failure in order to release yourself from the fear of it, it's not new. That is not unique to this time and age. It definitely speaks to something that's inherent in like human psychology that has been there for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, maybe more, right? So, that's something that we need to understand. This is like a very primal part of our existence that we can apply to sports performance, and it's really easier than you think. It's just sitting there and imagining yourself fail. The best season I ever had was my sophomore year of college, and I would always go up to the plate. I started doing this because I was in a really big slump. I was like 0 for 20. I went up to the plate and I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to try to get out. I don't even care anymore, like, because I've been trying so hard to get a hit. And I finally started hitting. I literally and then I started imagining myself trying to hit a line drive at the center fielder and get out. And I would imagine myself walking back to the dugout after failing, quote unquote, And then I totally turned around. Started the season 0 for 20, ended up batting almost 400.
Right. Well, I guess there's two things that I would say to you about that. Number one is I will ask you this question: what, at the end of the day, what is when you worry about like your strikeout, or you worry about your error, or how you personally did? What is that? What kind of? How would you describe that kind of emotion? It's selfish.
Exactly.
And so one of the things that we really preach at the school and we preach at Lawrence is altruistic behavior, that the outcome of the group is much greater and more important than your individual achievement or anything. So if you think about that, isn't that what the samurai were doing essentially, is saying, listen, we may fail, I may fail, but we're going to do it together.
But
we're
collectively.
Yes. And I think that's number one. Number two, the second part to it is, what was the best travel ball team during the Civil War?
Travel ball team?
Best travel ball team during the Civil War.
Well, I don't know if it existed.
There wasn't one, right? Like we live in a different world today. Like like especially in the Fox cities, how many travel ball teams are there now? How many travel ball programs are there now? How many people
Hundreds.
teach how to shoot a free throw, how to you can go to a lesson and you can learn how to fence now. At Lawrence University, they have like fencing lessons. You know what I mean? Things are so different, than they were even 100 75 years ago, right? So the thing is, like, I think like that's where the reinvention of your idea there, you know what I mean, has to come back to be reintroduced to what we're dealing with in modern sports.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true, and I definitely think there needs to be sort of like a resurgence or like a sort of going back.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much wisdom that gets
Mm-hmm.
missed because obviously we've made so many advances in understanding
Yeah.
kinesiology, the body, how things work, understanding just sort of like the meta of
Mm-hmm.
games, like in basketball now, shoot more threes, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
being like posting up in the paint's a little bit less effective. Everyone needs to be able to shoot, even the big men. In baseball, home runs is the name of the game. You don't necessarily need to have your table setters, just everyone try to hit
Mm-hmm.
home runs, Like there's in football too, just pass it all. Like there's way more passing, like progressively over
Mm-hmm.
time. Um, but and at the same time, maybe analytically that's the right thing to do. But there is some wisdom being lost there. Is kind of what I'm arguing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what you're saying is like
Yeah.
there's things in the past that are unique to the human experience that have to do with our psychology and just like that are super primal, like they're deep within us that have always been there that we can tap into to improve performance. And it's almost like
Mm-hmm.
we're pushing it to a side in order to look at this new like analytic stuff and all that.
Yeah. There's a lot of shortcut to that. I mean, in my opinion, like, why do we test exit speed? Why do we test bat speed? Why do we test how hard a pitcher throws or a kid throws a ball, how fast you are? Well, it's because there's certain markers, right? And sometimes there's some shortcuts to those markers just to make it. Um, I don't know. Here's the thing. Some of the best teams that I played on, we had those people who had the markers. They were great players, but we also played together as a team better than any other team I, was with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we were way better just because we were a good team, not necessarily had the best individuals. Because I've played on teams that had better single people,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't play very nicely in the sandbox and we didn't win. So I think that's part of it too. Like, I think that whole thing has to do with several things. Confidence is real. You have to feel good. Feeling good sometimes is like the absence of fear or worry or anxiety. And I also feel like it's also about having an altruistic idea of how your team operates, that it's not about me. And if it's not about you, then you're not really worried about 0 for 3.
So there almost has to be sort of like an ego death happening there, though.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but that's really what the samurai are talking about here. Like they would actually do stuff where they would write poems about death. Like a quote from one of them is, "This world a fading mountain echo. Today I vanish." It's like that's the exact same thing. It's like you're basically just entering the void. Like the same thing people call the zone or like being locked in.
Yeah.
Like you feel like everyone's felt this. Like when you play a game or do anything, I feel like it's easy. You're not even trying. You're not even thinking. It's almost like you're not even there. It's almost like you're like watching yourself do it from a third person perspective. That is the mindset you need to get. But the only way to do that is to go outside yourself and not care about your own like ego so much.
Right.
And so that's really powerful.
Well, I mean, obviously we're speaking metaphorically too. You've got, a samurai going to battle, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about athletes going to play, right? But here's the thing, like I can't even put myself in a samurai's shoes, like working, like fighting for a warlord, fighting for, what I mean? Like, hey, we're going to go and we're probably going to die. I mean, if you think about that, right? But we did talk a little bit in one of our episodes about, World War II landing on the beach, in the D-Day invasion in World War II. We said, I mean, how do you survive that? Because the idea is, hey, I might not make it. I probably won't make it. You know what I mean? And those who had made it, they all talk about like, yeah, I just accepted the fact that this may be the end. This might be my last day, and I'm going to do it for my country, for the people that I'm fighting with. So it's like that kind of thing. I think, is that kind of thing too. Another thing too, Tony, that I really want to talk about regarding this is, so I was just recently with a whole bunch of alums from Lawrence who played football, They didn't, best seasons, I think they were like 4-6, 5-5. I played with lots of them. They didn't talk a lot about the wins and the losses. They talked a lot more about the experience. And I think that comes with time and wisdom. Like, you know what I mean? Like, certainly you have had a really, you won in high school, you won in travel ball, you won at, College of Lake County, you won at out at Baltimore, you won everywhere you went. Right. So obviously you were on good teams and that was a good experience. But, when you're 52 years old, like these guys were that I was just talking to, are you going to talk about like that one game in Peoria when you played Heartland and, you struck out 2 times versus or whatever? Probably not. But you're going to say, yeah, I had a good experience at College of Lake County and I had a good coach and, all those things. I think that's something like too, like, people that think that way looking back, they probably did a pretty good job of like developing confidence, developing comfortability, developing a feeling of success that was more about the team and the process than those who only care about themselves. Because if you're 52 years old and you're talking about the interceptions you had or the home runs you had, like I don't know about you, but I really don't think, a conversation with Barry Sanders would ever start off with him talking about anything that he accomplished.
Right.
So I mean, that's just what I'm saying is like, I think I want to be Barry Sanders. I want my coaching style to be Barry Sanders. I want my players to be Barry Sanders, where they're more looking at, like it was the experience, the process, and looking back on it, it made you who you are, and also maybe helped you like in the become great at business or a great father or a mother or, you know what I mean? Something like that, because isn't that really what it is? You can't play ball forever, you know?
Right.
I certainly found that out, and the hard way, so,
Right. I definitely think your teammates they'll never remember what your batting average was, or, I mean, I forget what mine, I had to look mine up the other day because I did a video on batting average and I forgot what it was, but it's like, your teammates will remember though, how you make them feel and like how you added to the culture of the team and like how you carried yourself. But that's about it. Like no one's going to remember. Maybe if you have like a walk-off hit or something.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's not like that big of a deal. Probably in retrospect, it's just like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah,
but that's it.
Was Tony a stand-up guy? Did he? They have a feeling about you that has nothing to do with analytics.
Right.
Those markers are irrelevant.
Yeah.
The problem is to get to that level, the markers are so prevalent that we're all over it. You know what I mean? So.
Right. Well, I mean, the other thing is just to quote Tom Brady here, he said, I don't care about being better than someone else. I care about being the best version of myself. And so, that's someone who is very likely, I mean, probably is the best quarterback of all time. But, we had this conversation the other day, but, he's talking about the same thing. Like, he doesn't care about his accomplishments as far as like, because there's a lot of comparison there. The minute you start saying, okay, I had this interception, or I made this tackle, or I won this game, all of a sudden now you kind of have to start comparing yourself to other people, because now all of a sudden this person has more touchdowns than me.
Right.
This girl has more points than me in this game, And then all of a sudden you go down this rabbit hole of like, if you're going to care about all that stuff, now all of a sudden you're actually putting yourself down because there's always someone who has a better stat than you,
Yeah, I can't tell you how many, how many times I've been on coaching a team and you get someone who gets mad because someone else has success.
Yeah.
Like it's a competition.
Exactly.
It's not. The minute you let go of that, like you'll be just a better person. You look at all these people on the wall behind us. There's a lot of musicians up there. Eddie Van Halen's up there, and you've got people like Nancy Sinatra or Bruce Springsteen or David Bowie. Do you think David Bowie and Bruce Springsteen really cared which one of them had more hits or more hit albums? I think David Bowie was pretty much worried about making good art, and I think Bruce Springsteen, if you watch the new movie that's out, probably worried about like just representing New Jersey and like making his music the way he wanted.
Right.
I don't know. Bohemian Rhapsody just showed that too with Queen. Like Seriously, those guys don't care about that stuff because it doesn't matter what David Bowie is doing. It's what Bruce Springsteen's doing or what Freddie Mercury's doing. I don't know. In my opinion, I think that's something that we lose too a little bit today. In this, there's a lot of me world going on, and it's important that we understand that. Real confidence, true confidence, is not succeeding to do better than someone else on your team or succeeding to do better than someone else in the conference to be all conference. I feel more like you're going to be all conference or all state or all American if you follow the process and do the right things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Ironically, you end up being like accomplishing things and getting those outcomes more when you stop caring about it.
Yeah.
But that's the ultimate. Like everyone says, trust the process, but I don't think people know what that means. I think a lot of people think it's like, oh, just work hard.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's a mindset. It's what we're talking about. You have to let go. People try to hold on so much. Like, I have to accomplish this. I have to do this. It's better to just kind of, it's actually like an inaction. It's not an action. Yeah. It's almost, it's lacking. It's like getting rid of something. That's what you need to do.
So so here's the other thing. If you want to talk about history, it's a very American thing.
Yeah.
To think that way, the negative way of it, and I'll explain it to you like this. Okay, I'm. How many people do you know? Oh, I'm gonna, and you may know somebody who's very close with you that talks this way a little bit. I'm gonna lose a bunch of weight. I'm gonna work out really hard. I'm gonna get in great shape. I'm gonna do all this stuff, and then they can't do it for like 30 minutes because they've got something else that got in the way. So they don't do it at all, and they don't do it at all for like 5 straight days. When if they would have spent 5 minutes each day doing something, they would have been closer to the process achieving itself.
That's so true.
Or think of it this way: that it's so someone who's like in my shoes, like I'm a diabetic, right? So for me, there's days when I literally like, okay, let's just be honest here, not to support Quick Trip any more than I already do, but they have delicious pudding.
Right.
Okay, so I walk by and it's on the left every time I go in for a coffee. And now they have vanilla, and chocolate. And sometimes it's banana, chocolate, and then vanilla. I love it. I love pudding. It's like one of my favorite things. Now, literally, I cannot have that every day. But if I do it once, I have one pudding or whatever. I mean, I forgive myself because the process is this. Where am I trying to get to? Great blood sugar levels. Well, if that's the case, you can't sit there and beat yourself up one time because you failed at something and then just give in and out, you're having 10 puddings a day. That's insane because now that's the opposite. And that's a lack of comfortability, confidence, and, all those things psychologically that say, hey, you know what I mean? It's kind of like striking out. It's also like, oh, I'm not going to hit today. Well, you don't forgive yourself and then you don't hit all week.
Yeah.
Whereas, maybe, hey, listen, I only got 15 minutes. So today what I'm going to work on is a vision drill. I'm going to work on seeing the ball or, something small. It's all process. And, and I think like that type of thinking is very unselfish. It's very forgiving of yourself. You got to forgive yourself and love yourself a little bit to be a good softball or baseball player.
Yeah. Even doing 1 minute a day is better than nothing. Well, or even like showing like, okay, here's a good example. Today, like going to jiu-jitsu today, like I was super tired, didn't get a ton of sleep. There's snow everywhere.
Yeah.
I had to shovel before I was going to get out, whatever. It's better to show up tired, like in a bad mood, back sore from shoveling or something, and you're at your best, but just show up anyways and just kind of not have your best day, than not show up at all.
Well, you're probably forgetting this, but if you remember during COVID, I think your school shut down at one point in the middle of your season.
Everybody.
Middle of your season, right?
Yep.
And you came home and you were here. And I don't know if you remember this, but there were days when you were literally having me throw you dog toys in the basement. I would flip it to you and you'd hit it against the wall. Or we'd go outside and I'd throw sunflower seeds to you and you'd hit it just to work on vision. How much time did that take? 5, 15 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
But it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
How much, what if you look at the percentages, if it's a 100%, you being the worst possible player at 0 and the best possible player at 100%, how much did those little things mean to your percentages? Probably very little.
Yeah.
But how much did it mean in your 0 to 100% confidence?
Over time.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like, because you put the work in, you knew you were processing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's my modern take on it. I love your historical perspective here, though, especially with the samurai, because I mean, literally, like, obviously, some of the most stoic and like intelligent ideas and philosophies that came out of that type of idea, and like being perfect at everything you do. That's the samurai way, right? How do I get perfect at what I do? I just process. I'm sure the greatest swordsman in the history of the samurai didn't say, "Oh, I failed today. I'm not going to practice the sword tomorrow." Like
Right.
they picked it up and they did it again, and they did it again, and they did it again.
So do you think those excuses that we make where it's like, because let's think about it, what prevents people from going to the cage and going to the weight room? It's usually, I'm tired, I don't have time, I'm sore, or I had a bad day, right? Are those things, what is that? Are they holding on too much, like we said? Are they being selfish? What is that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's lots of reasons, the variables are all out there, but one of them is, I mean, I don't think people are necessarily lazy, like, I mean, I really don't know that there's too many athletes in the modern world that are lazy, because everybody's got to lift and everybody's got to do all this different stuff. So they know what's up, but there's certain players that are kind of like, meh, it's not for me to do that all the time. But they're also accepting mediocrity, you know what I mean? Or they're accepting that, hey, I'm probably not going to be there. But those are sometimes some of the people that get the most angry when they fail. So it's like, like, hey, if you didn't put the time in, first of all, you're not going to play or start. And then you can't get mad about that, or you can't get mad about your failure because you really didn't put the time in,
Think about it this way. Like, if you put in as much time as you can and then you go play a game, you're kind of just relaxed because you don't really care. At that point, it's like, I've done all I can. What else can I do? So if I fail or succeed, screw it. Who cares?
Well, remember when you said what you said before about like almost like playing out of your body and like seeing yourself play.
Yeah.
So like, I know you're named after two Tonys that were great baseball players, obviously Tony Kubek and Tony Gwynn. But the thing is, with Tony Gwynn, I always think about him like there's real footage of him literally telling his teammates that he was going to hit a ball right to a spot on the ground because he knew what the guy was throwing. And some people might say that Tony Gwynn is like the one of the greatest hitters of all times in baseball. I would argue that. I would also argue that he may have like overthought it a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
But he knew what the pitcher was throwing, and he knew what he was capable of, and he literally was out of body and literally did exactly what he said. And then when he got to the bench, like his teammates were just looking at him like, God, like, I'm not that good. You know what I mean? How much do you think that that inspired those guys to start being like process driven and putting all the time in like he did? Because he obviously put the time in, and I mean, I don't know that he was the best athlete at the end of his career, but he was still one of the greatest hitters at the end of his career because he was so process driven,
Exactly. Because at the end of his career, it's not like he's running a 6.5 60.
No.
It's not like
he was in the beginning, but now
it's not like he's reverse lunging 315 pounds.
No.
He's just like, he's just out there at 35, 4 years old, batting 300.
Yeah.
So like, but clearly the reason he's able to do that, it's something within, right? Like, because everyone knows you have to put the time in. Everyone knows you have to lift, do all these things. But what is like the internal, like what's the root cause of all that? What allows you to be that disciplined? What, and so like to quote Leonardo da Vinci here, he said, he can go to the fountain, does not go to the water jar. Meaning like go to the source, not like the summary of what's going on. Like what is because lifting, hitting in the cage every day, throwing, doing stretching, that is like the outside perspective, but there's something driving that within, and that is what we should be focusing on. I feel like, you know what I mean?
Like I hate to, I'm going to say this right now because every day I get every acronym you can think of sends me players every day, and I have to look at their profiles, and I'm picking and choosing which kids I'm looking at. certain things make me decide, okay, academically, are they good enough to go to my school? Do I need their position? Do I like the comments made by the coach? All those things, right? But every player starts off by saying, I have been playing softball since I was 9 years old. I swear to you, if I showed you how many emails start off that way,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care about any of that, because every kid starts off playing softball at 9 years old or 10 years old or whatever it is. And I've dedicated my life to getting to, it's the same words.
Right.
But what really stands out to me though is when I see video, and it's video of a game, and there's a big hit, or there's a video of a game and there's really good base running. There's video of a game and there's a really headsy play that they did either on the bases or in the field or something like it. Because I'm looking at all that. If I start diving into a player, I'm diving into every one of their videos and what they're about, and then I'm looking at what the coach says too, because I feel like a lot of those times, like every coach says that a kid is the best kid that they've seen in 50 years, or it's like all these things. I need to know a little bit more, and if I could develop an elixir like you're talking about, like Leonardo DiCaprio, Da Vinci saying,
yeah.
sorry, he's going, go to the fountain. Okay, what is that elixir? What is it? Because we need, we want those kids who will run through a wall, the kids that will always slide without being told, the kid that's gonna do extra hitting outside of the practice time.
Mm-hmm.
How do we find those kids? How do we develop that elixir where they all buy into it? Some of it is being on a team where everyone does that, so you better do it, otherwise you're not going to make it. Some of that is, leadership. Some of that's upbringing, all that kind of stuff. So when you were asking that, I don't know that there's a button. I don't know that there's a light switch. It's something that's also in the process. It's a lifetime process, because either players have it or they learn it, but very few of them ever really figure out the true way of doing it. Does that make sense?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, that's why I didn't take a part in your recruiting process, because I knew that you had the light switch, and I knew that other coaches and other people would say it. As your dad, if I'm saying, "Oh, this kid," who cares what I say? It's totally irrelevant, because nobody cares. I'm your dad.
Right.
Of course, I'm your fan. But are the other people a fan of you? Well, yeah, because you did all the things. You did it right in front of them. You worked hard. You stayed extra. You picked up balls. You did. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
That's where I think the truth of the confidence and stuff comes from, is that it's. You have to either have that light switch, which that button like you do, I think, or you have to see it and go, yeah, that's something I'm going to do. And for some people, it happens at different times. Like I think of like some of the there's like great actors out there who who start their acting career at like 50 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, why did they wait so long? And then they give us this amazing 30 years of work. And, Morgan Freeman, type of person.
Right.
And it's like, wow, but why did they wait? I don't know, because maybe they needed to get that light switch turned on.
Yeah. So do you think it's within everyone? It's just more like you have to let it out kind of thing?
Yeah. And I think it has a lot to do with interest, care. Like it does, I mean, how do you learn to become a great student?
Well,
either you've got a blessing, or, you just learn things quickly and, the answer to every test, or you have to put the time in. It's a process, right? But there's a switch. I can tell you this. I never had the switch. I read faster than most people I know. I can remember things that most people forget, I can do all those things. But if I'm not interested in something, I just, I'm like, I mean, no offense, but elementary statistics was not exactly fun for me, because I don't really care. I care about statistics for softball and baseball and stuff like that or whatever, but I'm not worried about all these different formulas and things like that. It's just not interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, but you put me in an emergence of the modern world class, and I am really in. I love history, so I'm like, man, I'm soaking it up, and I'm reading extra stuff to figure out some things that I read in the textbook. And, I'm asking questions in class, and I'm engaged, So the light switch is sometimes it's interest and care, so that's my thought process on that. But I mean, how do you get kids interested? Coaches, if you're a coach, make it fun. It's a game, make it fun, make them want to come to practice, do something every practice that's goofy, that's different, that, what I'm saying, don't get caught in your ways where you're just like constantly doing the exact same thing all the time. Maybe start practice with a bang, do something that, is like crazy, like put everybody at second base and hit the ball to the gap and have them work on reading and scoring after a lead, like stuff like that, and have them slide it home with a sliding mat or something, like something that's a bang, because then they start practice high energy, everyone's pumped up,
Right.
and then when it comes down to the game where you're losing, 2-1, second and third, and 2 outs and whatever, and you get that hit. It's the energy. It's that hey, I'm comfortable doing this. I'm confident doing this because I've done it. Coach had us practice it, But if you're just like, all right, we're going to work on bunt coverages again, for the third time this week. I mean, you probably got the bunt covered. You know what I mean?
Right.
we literally have one bunt coverage.
Right. Just throw it to first base.
Yeah. So and basically it's this: if you're a slapper and you're bunting on us, we're taking it away. If you're a team that squeezes all the time or bunts to get on to lead off the inning, we're taking it away. We're killing it. We're squashing it. When we practice that, when we practice the rotation, either you're going to third or you're going to second base as a shortstop, and as an outfielder, you're either going to third or second base to cover somewhere. But listen, I'm not spending hours doing that. What a waste of time,
Yeah.
Like, simple, catch the ball and get the person out.
Well, something interesting for you here. Neuroscientists have found, lately that the brain, so like our psychology, we hate uncertainty more than failure itself. So here's a good example. It's like the fear when people are afraid to fail, it's not that they're afraid of striking out necessarily. It's more like their identity is at stake.
Mm-hmm.
If I fail, I'll figure out something about myself that I'm not ready to face. Like it might mean I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm not disciplined enough. When you strike out, it's if your identity is wrapped up in your ability to play, all of a sudden you're the problem. Like you as a being, right? And that can make people very, very like anxiety ridden and defensive.
You mentioned so many people here, and I watched your mini cast the other day. There's a lot of men there. I'll throw something out at you. What about Amelia Earhart? So what is she known for? First person to fly across the Atlantic, one of the first person to do transcontinental flight, all that kind of stuff, right? As a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the question. What made her think that she could fly around the world? The confidence, the comfortability that she had done some pretty amazing things, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously she passed away. Do you think that she went up in the air that day, or the time when she went over the Atlantic, or the time that she went transcontinental, and she didn't think about that it might be the last time she flew, the last time she saw her friends?
Right.
I mean, I'm just being really honest here, right? So I think that's another, if we could find a quote from her, I'm sure she would say, hey, these things that I'm doing, it's not necessarily that I want to do this or I want to do that, but I think it's more along the lines of, I believe I can do it because I want to be the first to do it. And it was a cool thing.
Right. Yeah. She said, courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, yeah.
One more thing. She also said, fear is paper thin. Once you walk through it, you realize there was nothing there. Attributed to her philosophy through sometimes paraphrased. So, you're right.
I mean, I'm just, and I don't know these quotes. I just know this. Like, I just think about her a lot because, like, the other day there was a thing on like the Bermuda Triangle. They were talking about there's a possibility that maybe she was lost in the Bermuda. I was like, I don't know about that, but I do know this. Like, we didn't see her again.
Yeah.
So something happened.
Right.
But like, do you think she cared? No. Like, like her courage and her her, I guess, her exploratory, optimism was like, hey, I want to be the first woman to do this.
Right.
Pretty cool in my opinion. Like,
the only way to achieve something like that though is to like enter the void and like have that ego death where, hey, I probably won't even succeed, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
I like the paper thin idea because it's true. Like, I think, Do you mind if I tell you something that's really, really cool? Like, it just take a second. So
Mm-hmm.
when I made these wood um, plates, 45-pound plates. I had three of them made for two sides of the so six total. I had them on both sides of the bar, and I had it setting out at our first practice for baseball at Lawrence. This is many many years ago. I want to say like 2000 or something like that. And I said, hey, I need someone to go over here and show everybody that they can lift this, and just a deadlift,
Mm-hmm.
and no one wanted to do it. But it was like so funny because the one kid that I had recruited that I knew was going to do it did it. He walked right up there and he grabbed it and he lifted it off the ground, and he didn't let on that it was lighter than he expected. I had painted them. They looked just like plates.
Mm-hmm.
And then another guy goes over there because he did the one that I least expected to do it, but now he felt confident and he lifted it. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, "What the hell?" Like so. Another guy is like the
Yeah.
smallest guy goes and lifts it. It was really interesting. And I said to them, I said, "This has something. I have proven a point that what seems to be impossible to you is really not impossible, as long as you believe that you can do something
Oh
or
yeah.
you're willing to try." Growing up, my mom had a thing on the wall that said, "Every accomplishment, great or small, starts with two words: I'll try." And
Mm-hmm.
that made a big difference in my life. I mean, I got my hair cut right there. She always sat you there and you faced it. And I thought to myself, I saw that like every time, all every day,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just a phrase to us. It was something because if you don't try, if you don't get out of bed in the morning, you're not going to go to class. You're not going to go to practice. You're not going to go to your job. Every accomplishment, great or small, is I'll try, rather than looking at the paper thin excuses that might stop you or the fear that you might fail. I think that's really important.
Amelia Earhart said, "Never interrupt someone during doing what you said couldn't be done." You know,
Mm-hmm.
so everything's impossible until someone does it.
Yeah.
Like there's millions of things that were once impossible that we just do every day now. So,
Well,
like,
yeah. Think of her era.
yeah,
She came out of an era where women at one point didn't vote.
right.
What? Like she came out of an era where women weren't supposed to fly. Women weren't supposed to fight in the war.
Right.
And I don't know, you and I watched that show the other day. The Russians sent over 1 million women into war. And guess what? They were victorious over Germany. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, they held them back in Stalingrad, I think.
Something
That's
like that. Yeah, you're right about that.
so. I mean, it's interesting, and I just bring this up because I just think like sometimes too, like it's like I don't know. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, or what you believe in. It's just sometimes like just like those ideas need to come out from other perspectives because it kind of makes you say, "Oh, yeah, they were thinking that way too."
Yep, the Soviets, they had a sniper who was nicknamed the Lady Death, who had 300 confirmed kills, which is insane. They had the 588th Night Bomber Regiment, which is all female bomber pilots. So there's a lot of examples
Yeah.
on here, but yeah, you're right.
Does it say how many women fought in the war?
Um,
I bet it's over 1 million.
one sec. Yeah, millions.
Millions. Yeah. I
So
mean, so like I just think like those are the things too. Like I mean, what was going through their hearts and heads to get to win on the battlefield? What was going?
that's
What,
pretty altruistic.
yeah,
Like you
I
said.
think so too.
So
And I think that's something like the other thing you're thinking about too is just like what you said about Da Vinci, what you said about I can't remember what was the other. Oh, the samurai and stuff like that. Those are like just amazing, like examples. Like just hey, listen, prepare to fail. Understand failure is a one step closer to success.
mhm.
Look at it like as a stepping stone rather than something like what do we always say? Like to say to cross a river, you need to lay stones. You need to make a bridge. You know.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like failure is like not necessarily a rock into the river where it's gone forever. It's a rock to step on.